They abandoned the alien sisters in the cold streets, until one human whispered, "You belong with me now." The wind on Kryn 7 was poison. It carried black fog from broken towers, wrapped the streets in frost that burned the lungs. Few dared to stay outside for long. Yet Cale Draven, a tired mechanic, lived here by choice. His small shop, made of welded scrap metal, was all he had left after the mines crushed his leg and his career. Machines didn't lie, machines didn't betray, and machines didn't beg. That was why Cale fixed them. That morning, just before the sun cut through the smoke, Cale stepped out of his shop. He almost missed them. Two small shapes crouched beneath his rusted awning, still as thrown-away trash. But then one moved, breathing. Not trash. Not fabric. Living. The taller girl snapped up in an instant. Her eyes were amber and sharp, her pale green skin glowing under the weak light. Her body stood like a fighter's, one arm spread to guard the smaller one behind her. The second girl clung to her waist. She was softer, younger, with silver hair tangled across her face. Both were only scraps of cloth, torn ribbons, not clothes. Not enough to fight the cold. Cale froze. They stared back at him, tense like cornered animals. One wrong move and they would run, and here on Kryn 7, running meant death. He didn't ask questions. He didn't raise his voice. He simply unlocked his steel door and pushed it open. "You can come in," he said, low and calm. "Both of you. I won't call anyone. But I won't leave the door open forever." Then he stepped inside and sat down at his workbench as if nothing had happened. The door stayed ajar. 10 seconds. 20. Then quiet footsteps. 1, 2. They entered. The air inside was warmer. The old heater hummed. Salvaged LEDs flickered. Tools lined the walls. Cale didn't look directly at them. Instead, he pulled 2 of his own shirts from a crate and laid them near the heater. He turned on the sink, let the water run until steam rose. "Wash if you want. Food later. Don't break anything." The taller one finally moved. She sniffed the shirt, scanned the room with sharp eyes, then guided the smaller girl forward. The sound of water filled the silence. Cale kept working on a broken circuit board, hands steady, thoughts racing. Where had they come from? Who had left them outside? Why hadn't they spoken a word? He stole one glance and saw them curled on the cot together, wearing his shirts, drying slowly. The smaller girl's head rested under her protector's chin. The taller girl never stopped staring at him, watching, measuring. The silence grew heavy. Then a fist pounded on the outer shutter. "Hey, Draven," a rough voice called. "You seen anything strange? 2 pretty Dender girls loose in this sector. Worth a lot of credits if you know where they are." The girls stiffened. The smaller one trembled. Cale's jaw tightened. He picked up a heavy wrench and stood. The story was no longer about machines. The pounding on the shutter echoed through the scrap walls. Cale Draven gripped the wrench tighter, his fingers white against the metal handle. He knew that voice. Drex Vorn, a scavenger and small-time dealer who circled like a vulture around the weak. Drex sold scrap, stolen tech, and when he could, people. Inside the shop, the 2 alien girls pressed close to the heater. The younger one, Mira Velen, clutched the blanket Cale had thrown over her. Her shoulders shook, her blue eyes wide with fear. The older one, Sira Velen, pulled her close, but her jaw was hard. She was ready to fight, even barefoot and bruised. Cale moved to the slot in the shutter and slid it open a crack. "Closed," he said flatly. "Closed?" Drex laughed, his voice slick like oil. "I hear rumors, Draven. 2 Dender girls loose, pretty ones. Fragile ones. Nobody keeps strays on Kryn 7. Unless you're hiding them." Cale stepped out, opening the hatch halfway. Fog curled between them like smoke. "They're not here." Drex tried to peer past him. His eyes narrowed. "Not yet, maybe." A man could make a month's fuel handing them over. Cale rapped the wrench against the steel frame. The clang was sharp and loud, echoing down the alley. Try Sector 11, he said. His voice carried no warmth, no joke. Drex smirked but raised his hands. All right, Draven, no need to get twitchy. I was just asking. He stepped back into the mist. His footsteps faded, but Cale knew Drex too well. He would be back, and next time, not alone. When Cale bolted the shutter, he turned and saw the girls hiding behind the workbench. Mira's lips moved, whispering something soft in her own tongue. Syrah stared at him like she was trying to see inside his skull, weighing if he was safe or dangerous. No one's coming in here without going through me, Cale said quietly. But firmly, Syrah's shoulders eased a little, not much, but enough. Hours crawled by. The fog outside thickened, pressing against the windows. Cale sat at his bench, pretending to work, though his eyes flicked toward the cot again and again. The girls hadn't spoken his language. They hadn't asked for food. Still, when he heated 3 ration packs, he set 2 near them and said, "Eat." Mira hesitated. She sniffed the food, then took a slow bite, as if afraid it would be snatched away. Her face softened at the warmth. Syrah waited, watching, before finally tasting her own. She ate with small, careful bites, never lowering her guard. Cale didn't press them. He just worked quietly, soldering wires. Machines were simpler than people. But tonight, even the machine felt like it was listening. When night fell, Cale gave them the cot and sat in his chair instead. The heater glowed red. Outside, pipes hissed with steam, and voices echoed faintly through the mist. Cale did not sleep. He stayed half awake, the wrench across his lap. The second morning, Cale brewed strong synth coffee. He poured 3 cups. This time, he didn't just leave theirs by the heater. He walked it over, set it on a crate by the cot, and waited. Mira stirred first. She blinked, confused, then reached slowly for the cup. She sipped, her eyes widening at the heat. She looked up at him, surprised. "I don't want anything from you," Cale said simply. "Drink, stay warm, rest, that's it. You don't owe me anything." Her lips parted, as if she might speak. But before she could, heavy footsteps echoed outside. 2 men, their voices carried through the thin walls. Shops still open. Heard Draven's keeping company. Tender girls, pretty, could fetch good credits. The sisters froze. Mira pressed into Syrah's chest. Syrah rose at once, her blade already in her hand, moving toward the window slit. Cale caught her arm before she got too close. "They're just talking," he whispered. "If they knock, I'll handle it." Her amber eyes burned with tension. For a heartbeat, Cale thought she would rip free. But then she pulled back, though every muscle in her body stayed coiled. The voices faded into the fog. Silence returned, heavy as stone. Cale sat across from them on the floor. No bench between, no tools in hand. Just him, tired and direct. "Tell me what happened," he said. "Who's looking for you?" Mira glanced at her sister. Syrah's eyes locked on Cale. Silence stretched. Finally, her voice came, rough, dry. "They bought us for a diplomat, a breeder. A guest changed his mind, said I was too wild. Said she was too soft." Her jaw clenched. "They dumped us near a cargo depot 3 nights ago." Cale's chest tightened, though his face stayed still. "Implants? Tags?" Syrah shook her head. "No, new stock, off record." "Then they'll be hunting hard," Cale muttered. Mira's voice was barely above a whisper. "Are you going to turn us in?" "No," Cale said at once. His tone left no room for doubt. "Why?" she asked. "You don't know us." He leaned back, sipped his coffee, and met her eyes. "Neither did the people who left you in the cold. That was enough for me." Silence followed. Not the same as before. Less like fear. More like something shifting. That night, Cale cleared a corner of the shop. He pulled out a backup heater, set out blankets, and stepped back. "Yours," he said simply. The sister said nothing. Mira curled into the blanket, her eyes softening. Sira sat close, still holding her blade, but her shoulders weren't so tight anymore. Cale sat in his chair, the wrench across his lap, listening to the storm outside. He knew Drex Vorn wasn't finished. The hunters would come. And when they did, Cale would be ready. The third night came heavy with fog. On Kryn 7 the mist was never clean. It carried the stink of burnt oil and metal, rolling down from the upper towers until it drowned the alleys. Cale Draven sat at his workbench, tools spread before him. But his eyes were not on the wires. His ears were tuned to every sound outside. The heater buzzed softly. In the corner, Mira Velen was curled under the blanket, her silver hair falling over her face as she slept. Beside her, Sira Velen sat awake, back straight, blade across her knees. Her amber eyes glowed faint in the dark. She hadn't closed. Them once since the sun went down. Cale bent low over the circuit board, pretending to work, though his thoughts were far from it. He had lived in District 9 long enough to know what fog meant. Fog gave cover. Fog hid hunters. And Drex Vorn liked to strike when no one could see. Then footsteps. Heavy. 2 pairs. Slow. Cale froze. He reached under the bench and pulled out his wrench rifle, resting it across his lap. With a flick, he killed the overhead lights. The shop sank into shadow, the only glow coming from the red heater. The boots stopped outside the shutter. Voices followed, muffled but close. "You sure he's got them?" one asked. "Drex swears it." 2 Dender girls, untagged, could fetch a fortune. Mira stirred, her eyes snapping open. She pressed herself against her sister's side. Sira stood instantly, blade in hand, moving toward the window slit. Cale rose and caught her wrist before she got too close. "Stay down," he whispered. Her amber eyes burned at him, sharp as a blade. She pulled against his grip, ready to fight. But Myra let out a soft gasp, clutching Sira's arm. That stopped her. She crouched low again, though her body stayed. Tight, like a spring ready to snap. The voices outside lingered. The men waited, whispering. Then, slowly, their boots moved on, fading into the fog. Cale waited long after the sound was gone. Then he eased the rifle back onto the bench. "They're just scouts," he said quietly. "Testing. They'll be back." Sira stared at him, her jaw hard. At last she spoke. "Next time, I kill them." Cale shook his head. "Not unless. We have no choice. You're not an animal, Sira. Don't let them make you one." Her eyes widened slightly at the sound of her name. He had spoken it like it belonged to her, not to the hunters. She looked away, blade still in her hand, but she did not argue. Morning came gray. The fog clung to the windows like glue. Cale brewed 3 cups of coffee and set them on the crate. Mira reached first this time, sipping quickly, her eyes brightening. She looked at him over the rim of the cup. "What's your name?" Cale asked gently. She hesitated. "Myra." Cale gave a small nod. "Myra Velen. Good name." His eyes turned to Sira. "And you?" For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "Sira." Cale nodded once more. "Sira Velen." She blinked at him, suspicious but curious. He didn't push further. He simply returned to his work as if nothing had changed. But in the silence, something had. Later that day, Cale dragged heavy crates away from the back wall. Beneath the rust and dust, a sealed hatch waited. He pried it open, the bolts groaning under his weight. Sira appeared at his side without a sound. She crouched low, eyes fixed on the hatch. "What is this?" "Storage bay," Cale said, grunting, as he forced the lock. "Hasn't been opened in years. But it's safer than upstairs. If they come back, we'll need it." The hatch creaked open, releasing a gust of stale air. Cale lowered a lantern down. The bay below was half flooded. But one side was dry enough. "It'll do," he muttered. Syrah's amber eyes flicked from the hatch to him. She gave a single nod. No argument. That night they moved below. Mira carried the blankets, her steps careful on the stairs. Cale brought the heater, while Syrah followed last, her blade always ready. The lower bay smelled of rust and oil, but it was hidden. It had a second exit, one that could not be seen from the street. Cale set the lantern on a crate and spread out the blankets in the corner. "Yours," he said simply. Mira touched the fabric with cautious fingers. She lay down, close to her sister, her breathing soft and steady. Syrah sat upright, her blade across her knees. But her shoulders no longer seemed as tight. Cale sat on a crate, rifle across his lap, staring into the shadows. The fog outside pressed against the dome. He could almost hear Drex Vorn's voice in it, whispering promises of capture and credits. But down here in the hidden bay, they were ghosts no longer. They had names now. They had a place, however small, and Cale Draven had already decided no one would take them away. The storm came hard that night. On Kryn 7, rain was never clean, only runoff from ruined towers, heavy with acid and smoke. It slammed the roof panels of Cale Draven's shop like fists on steel. The noise was so loud that at first he almost missed the other sound, a click. At the rear hatch, Cale froze in his chair, wrench rifle resting across his knees. His eyes narrowed. That hatch had been sealed for years. No one used it. Not unless they wanted to come in quiet. He rose slowly and crossed the floor. In the corner, Mira Velen stirred in her sleep, her silver hair falling across her face. Syrah. Valen sat awake, as always, sharpening her blade with a strip of wire mesh. She stopped at once, eyes sharp. She had heard it too. "They're cutting," Cale whispered. Syrah stood in silence, her blade ready. She moved toward the hatch, but Cale raised a hand. "Stay with Mira," her amber eyes flashed. She looked ready to fight, but Mira shifted. In her sleep, murmuring something soft. That was enough. Syrah crouched down beside her sister, one arm protectively across her. Cale slid the manual override bar into the hatch lock. The metal hissed as heat burned into the seam. Someone outside was using a thermal blade to slice through. Cale's jaw tightened. He counted 3 breaths. Then he acted. With one hard kick, he slammed his boot into the hatch. The steel groaned outward, crashing into something solid. A grunt of pain. Cale didn't hesitate. He fired the wrench rifle once through the gap. The shot hissed into the fog. A scream followed. Boots scrambled in retreat. Cale didn't chase. Chasing meant traps. He stayed still, rifle up, listening. 10 long minutes passed before he slid the override back into place. When he cracked the hatch to check, the alley was empty. Only puddles and fog remained. He turned back inside. Mira and Syrah were crouched behind a stack of crates. Mira's eyes were wide, her hands shaking as she clutched the blanket. Syrah's arms wrapped around her sister, her blade still ready, her face calm but tight. She whispered in their own tongue, soft and steady, trying to calm her. Cale lowered the rifle. "Just a scout," he said quietly, "but they'll come back." Syrah met his eyes across the room. "You should have let them in," she said, voice rough. "I would kill them." Cale shook his head. "Not unless there's no choice. You're not an animal, Syrah. Don't let them make you one." Her eyes widened slightly at his words. For a moment, her hand trembled on the blade. She didn't answer. She just looked away, her jaw clenched. "You're safe here," Cale added softly. "I'm in it." For the first time, her shoulders eased just a little. The storm raged all night. Cale stayed awake by the door, rifle across his lap. Syrah sat near him, her blade resting across her knees. Mira curled against her sister, her breathing uneven, sometimes waking with small gasps before falling back to sleep. Cale's eyes burned with exhaustion. but his mind stayed sharp. He remembered other nights years ago when he had heard screams in the fog and done nothing. He had let the hunters drag people away. This time, he would not. Morning came dim, the storm leaving puddles across the floor where the roof had leaked. Cale checked his old perimeter sensors. The signals told him what he already knew. Someone had been outside at dawn. Watching, scouts. They won't stop, Cale said aloud. Sierra was at the window slit, scanning the street. She gave a short nod. They want us. Yes, Cale said. He crouched beside Mira, who sat close to the heater, her eyes tired but alert. But they won't have you. Not while I'm here. Mira's lips trembled. Why? She asked softly. Why help us? Cale looked at her for a long moment, then answered, because no one else will. The words sank into the silence like stone into water. Mira looked down, clutching the blanket tighter, but her breathing slowed. Sierra's eyes lingered on him, unreadable, before she turned back to the window. Later, Cale cleared the lower bay further. He dragged down bedding, an extra heater, and a lantern. The space smelled of rust, but it was hidden safe. Sierra worked beside him without being asked, lifting crates like they weighed nothing. She never spoke, but her presence at his side said enough. When night came, the three of them sat together in the bay. Cale on a crate, rifle resting across his knees. Sierra leaning against the wall, her blade across her lap. Mira curled under the blanket, pressed between them. The lantern light flickered across their faces. For the first time, Cale felt the shop wasn't just his anymore. The space belonged to them all. But outside, in the fog, the hunters waited. Drex Vorn would not give up. He had tasted the trail. And Cale knew next time they would not send scouts. Next time they would come ready. And he would be waiting. The lower storage bay smelled of rust, oil, and damp stone. The air was heavy, but it was hidden. Cale Draven lowered a lantern onto a crate. Its glow pushed the shadows back. Mira Velen sat wrapped in a blanket, her silver hair spilling over her shoulders. She pressed her knees to her chest, her blue eyes watching Cale with quiet trust and quiet fear. Sierra Velen crouched nearby, her blade across her lap. She didn't speak, but her amber eyes searched the room, testing every corner. She looked like a soldier protecting a post. Though she had never worn armor, Cale set down his pack and pulled out a small console. It was old, dented, patched with wires, but it still worked. He powered it on, and green text flickered across the screen. Mira tilted her head. What is that? Paperwork, Cale said. Sierra frowned. Paper? Records, he explained. Files, names. If someone scans you, you need to be real. Not ghosts, Mira blinked. Real? Yes, with a family name. With documents. Cale's voice was steady. With me. The sisters exchanged a look. Mira's lips parted in surprise. Sierra's jaw tightened. Why? She asked flatly. Cale met her eyes. Because when they come back, they'll scan. If you're ghosts, they'll know. But if you're family with me, the system will lie. Silence followed. The heater buzzed. Softly, at last, Sierra gave a single nod. Not thanks. Not trust, but agreement. Hours passed. Cale typed nonstop, lines of code filling the console. He dug deep into old contacts, old codes from his mining days. His fingers didn't stop. Beside him, the sisters sat close together under the blanket. Mira fell asleep first, her breathing soft. Sierra stayed awake longer, eyes half closed but fixed on Cale, watching him like he was a puzzle. At last, Cale leaned back. His eyes burned from the screen, but the files were complete. Clean, perfect. He read them once more. Sierra Velen Draven, dependent, rescued from an off-world labor camp. Myra Velen Draven, dependent, trauma survivor, medical note attached. Guardian, Cale Draven, mechanic, local citizen. He saved the files. copied them onto 2 small chips, and shut down the console. "Done," he whispered. The next morning, Kale brewed coffee. Mira stirred at the smell, rubbing her eyes. "What happened?" she asked. "You have names now," Kale said. He handed her a cup. She frowned. "Names?" "Yes. Myra Draven. Sira Draven. Family." Mira stared at him, eyes wide. She looked at her sister, as if asking if it was real. Sira's amber gaze stayed on Kale. Her voice came low. "You lie for us." Kale nodded. "I've lied for worse." Mira's lips trembled. She clutched the cup to her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. The day passed in silence. Kale reinforced the bay door with scrap metal and welded a fresh lock into place. Sparks flew across the room as he worked. Sira stood close, blade at her side, but her body looked different, now less like a cornered animal, more like someone weighing choices. When Kale finished, he sat on a crate, wiping sweat from his forehead. Sira stepped forward. "You were..." "Soldier," she said. Kale shook his head. "Minor, but I carried men when the tunnels collapsed, men heavier than me." "That changes how a person walks." She tilted her head, studying him. "You don't flinch," she said. "Not even when I come close." "I learned not to waste movement," Kale answered for the first time. Something faint touched the corner of Sira's mouth. Not a smile, but close. That night, the storm returned, hammering the dome. Kale checked the sensors again. The screen showed faint signals, movement in the alleys. "They're scouting," Kale said. Sira stood at the window slit, her jaw set. "They will come." "Yes," Kale said. He crouched beside Mira, who sat curled by the heater. "But they won't take you, not while I'm breathing." Her blue eyes filled with tears. "Why?" she whispered again. Kale's answer was simple. "Because no one else will." The words hung heavy. Mira pressed into the blanket, but her breathing steadied. Sira's eyes locked on Kale, unreadable, before she finally looked away. Later, Kale laid 2 patched thermal shirts on the blankets. "Not scraps anymore," he said. "Yours, if you want." Mira touched hers with wonder. She slipped it on. The fabric too big but warm. Her face softened, as if for the first time she believed she might belong. Sira stared at hers for a long moment. Then, without a word, she pulled it over her head. She sat back down, blade still close, but something in her shoulders loosened. Kale leaned against the wall, rifle across his knees. The heater glowed. The storm roared outside. For the first time in years, the shop didn't feel empty, but in Kale's mind, one truth burned clear. This piece was borrowed. The hunters would return. Life in the lower bay grew quiet, but the silence was heavy. Kale Draven worked through the days, repairing machines for the few people who still wandered District 9. At night, he stayed close to Sira and Mira Velen, always listening for boots. In the fog, Mira spoke more now. Her voice was soft, but steady when she asked about Kale's tools, or why the heater buzzed, or why the coffee tasted bitter. Sometimes she hummed to herself when she thought no one was listening. Sira spoke less, but she moved closer when Kale worked. Her amber eyes followed his hands carefully, as if studying how he held a wrench or soldered a wire. Her blade was never far from her grip. She was still ready to strike at any sound. On the 6th night, Kale powered up an old cum unit he had hidden for years. The casing was cracked, wires patched with tape, but it still connected to the low-band signals drifting across the city. He wanted to know who was moving in the alleys. He wanted to know if Drex Vorn had spread word of the girls. The cum hissed with static. At first, only fragments of trade calls and dock chatter. But then Kale froze. A voice crackled through the static, cold, clear. Sira Velen, live return preferred. No visible injuries, buyer notified. Kale's jaw locked. He cut the power at once, yanked the battery free, and sealed the unit in resin. His heart pounded, but his hands stayed steady. Carried the news to the lower bay. The sisters sat on the floor, sharing a ration pack. Mira nibbled bread, her silver hair falling across her face. Sira sharpened her blade with slow, steady strokes. "They're coming," Kale said. His voice was flat, but heavy. Sira's head lifted immediately. How many? Too many to fight. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. Then we run. Mira froze. Her hands shook as she gripped the bread. Run where? Kale dropped his pack to the floor. I have an old hauler hidden in the tram lot. If it still works, we leave tonight. Myra's voice cracked. If they find us, will they take us apart? Separate us? Kale knelt in front of her. His voice was firm. No, not while I'm alive. Her blue eyes filled with tears. She nodded once, small and fragile, but her breathing steadied. Sira stood, blade still in her hand. What do we need? Kale pulled 3 old packs from storage. Each held thermal cloaks, rations, and water tabs. He threw one to Sira, another to Myra. Keep them close. Don't drop anything. Sira slung hers over her shoulder. Mira clutched hers against her chest. Kale strapped the last one across his back and pulled out a welding torch. We'll cut through the vent shaft. It's tight, but it leads to the filtration tunnels. From there, we reach the tram lot. Mira's voice was faint. And if they wait for us? Kale's jaw hardened. Then we make them wait forever. Minutes later, Kale forced the vent open. Rust showered down. The shaft yawned dark and narrow. Sira went first, crawling without hesitation, her blade tucked at her side. Mira followed, her breathing shaky, hands trembling as she dragged herself forward. Kale came last, sealing the hatch behind him with the torch. Sparks hissed as the seam closed tight. No way back. The shaft groaned with every movement. Metal scraped their knees and elbows. Mira gasped when her hand slipped, but Sira reached back and steadied her without looking. Kale whispered from behind, "Keep moving." Above them, faint boots echoed, men searching the shop. Mira whimpered, but Sira's hand brushed her arm in the dark. They pressed forward dotted last. Kale shoved open the exit panel. Cold night air rushed in, thick with smoke and dust. One by one, they slid out into a forgotten tram junction. Broken rails cut across the floor. Red emergency lights flickered weakly. The hauler sat half buried under scaffolding and cloth. Kale's heart jumped. He ripped away the tarp and slammed. His hand on the access pad. The door hissed open. Inside. Mira scrambled in first. Sira followed, blade drawn. Kale jumped last, sealing the hatch. The cabin stank of dust, but the console flickered faintly. He powered the engine. For a moment, nothing. Then a low hum filled the hauler. Relief spread through his chest. It still lives. Sira crouched. Near the door, eyes sharp. Mira hugged her pack to her chest, trembling. Kale gripped the controls. We have 20 minutes before the scans catch us, he said. After that, we're dark. Mira slumped against the wall. Her shoulders shook. Sira pulled her close, whispering in their language. Mira's sobs softened. Kale watched them both. He had seen survivors before, dozens, maybe hundreds. But never ones who looked at him not with fear, but with belief. Sira lifted her head, meeting his gaze. You could have run alone. I would have died alone, Kale answered. You risk everything for us. You're not things, Kale said. His voice was steady, strong. You're mine now. And I protect what's mine. The cabin went quiet. Mira's breathing slowed. Sira's eyes searched his, as if testing the weight of his words. Then she crawled forward, placing her hand on his. Mira moved too silent, leaning against his shoulder. Kale wrapped one arm around Mira, the other around Sira. No words. Just closeness. The hauler shook as it lifted from the ground. Outside, the fog swallowed District 9. Inside, for the first time, they weren't running alone. The hauler roared through the tunnels beneath Crin 7. Old rails shook beneath its weight, sparks flying as rusted metal scraped against its sides. Cale Draven sat at the controls, his jaw hard, eyes locked on the console. The machine was old, but it was theirs now. Behind him, Mira Velen clutched her pack, her silver hair sticking to her damp face. Her blue eyes were wide, but she said nothing. She leaned against Sira Velan, who crouched beside her with blade ready. Sira's amber eyes stayed fixed on the dark windows, watching for movement. The hauler climbed through a half-collapsed shaft and rattled into an abandoned freight route. Cale adjusted the controls, guiding it toward the outer docks. The radar gave him 20 minutes before patrol scans picked them up. After that, luck would decide. They'll follow, Sira said. Her voice was calm, but her hand stayed tight. On the blade. They'll try, Cale replied. His voice didn't shake. But I know these tunnels. I built this path myself. Sira studied him a moment, then nodded. Minutes dragged like hours. The tunnels shook with each turn. The hauler sputtered once, coughing smoke. Mira gasped, clutching her chest, but Cale gave her a quick glance. It'll hold, he said firmly. Then static crackled on the comm, a voice, distorted but clear. Target confirmed. Heat trail found. Sector 9 vent line. Prepare intercept. Mira's breath caught. They know. Cale ripped the comm wires free and threw them aside. Not anymore. He pushed the hauler harder. Sparks rained as the machine scraped the tunnel walls. They'll cut us off at the docks, Sira said. Not if we go under them. Cale pulled a lever. Hold on. The hauler screamed as it dropped into a side tunnel. Metal screeched, sparks bursting. Mira clung to Cale, crying out. Sira braced herself against the doorframe, her teeth clenched. The tunnel opened suddenly. Into a collapsed tram station, red lights flickered overhead. Broken rails twisted across the floor like bones. At the far end, faint daylight glowed. There, Cale muttered. The hauler burst from the vent in a spray of sparks. For the first time in weeks, open sky stood above dark, polluted but wide. Towers loomed like broken teeth across the horizon. Then the radar screamed. Blips appeared, fast, small, drones. Sira's blade tightened in her grip. There. Here. Cale slammed his hand on the throttle. Strap in. The hauler jolted forward, its engines howling. The first drone swooped from the fog, red lights burning. Plasma fire streaked past, carving holes in the ground. Mira screamed, ducking. Low. Sira pulled her close, shielding her with her own body. Cale swerved hard, the hauler skidding across the dock floor. Sparks exploded. Come on, old girl, he muttered to the machine. Don't fail me now. The outer dock stretched ahead. Half-broken towers rose, their scaffolding twisted. In the center stood an abandoned launch bay. Inside, a freighter. Weighted, rusted but whole. Cale's heart kicked. If it had power, it could take them off-world. But the drones were faster. One dived low, firing again. Plasma ripped into the hauler's rear. The machine jolted violently, smoke spilling from its vents. Mira fell against the wall with a cry. Stay with me. Cale shouted, wrestling the controls. The hauler shuddered but slid into the bay. He slammed the brakes. Out, the door hissed open. Sira jumped first, pulling Mira with her. Cale followed, dragging his pack and rifle. Together, they sprinted across the floor. The freighter loomed, huge and scarred. Cale slapped his hand on the access pad. For a breath, nothing. Then the door groaned open. Inside. He barked. They scrambled in. Cale ran to the cockpit. Dust coated the console, but when he powered it up, the engines hummed faintly. His chest tightened with relief. Still breathing, he muttered. Outside. The drone circled, red eyes glaring through the fog. "Hold together," Cale whispered to the ship. He slammed the ignition. The freighter shook, its frame groaning. The turbine spun, coughing smoke. Slowly, painfully, it lifted. Plasma fire smashed against its hull, rocking the ship. Mira screamed and pressed herself into Sierra's chest. Sierra held her tight, eyes blazing. The freighter climbed higher. The dock fell away beneath them. Towers shrank to jagged shadows. The fog thinned. And then stars. Cold. Clear. Endless. Cale sagged in the pilot's chair, sweat dripping down his face. His hands trembled, but his voice stayed steady. "We're free." Mira pressed her hand against the window, eyes wide. "Stars," she whispered. It was as if she had never seen them. Sierra leaned against the wall, her shoulders finally lowering. She looked at Cale, her amber eyes softer than before. "We are not ghosts anymore." Cale gave a tired smile. "No, not anymore." The freighter rattled, its path uncertain, but it carried them beyond Kryn 7. And for the first time since he had opened his door, Cale felt something new. Hope. The freighter drifted for days through empty space. Its engines rattled, its lights flickered, but it carried them farther and farther from Kryn 7. Cale Draven worked without rest, repairing what he could, patching wires, coaxing life back into the old systems. He slept only in short bursts in the pilot's chair, rifle resting across his lap. Sierra Velen kept watch at the cockpit door, her amber eyes always on the stars. She looked like she was waiting for hunters to burst from the void. Mira Velen stayed near the cabin, humming softly as she sorted their few supplies. She folded the blankets, arranged rations, and sometimes leaned against Cale's arm when she thought he wouldn't notice. For 12 days they drifted. Then finally the radar picked up a beacon, a station. "Small, old, but real. Haven," Cale said. His voice cracked from exhaustion, but carried relief. Arden Haven, a freehold, no registry, no slaver patrols. Mira whispered the word like a prayer. "Safe." The freighter touched down rough, its landing gear screaming against the rusted platform. The docking lights flickered weakly, but no guards appeared, no officials. Just silence. When the hatch opened, the air smelled of dust and stone. The dome overhead was cracked but strong enough to hold. Arden Haven wasn't pretty, but it didn't need to be. It was free. Cale traded the freighter for a small metal frame house near the edge of the dome. It wasn't much, just one room. A heater, a solar pad, and a water line. But the door locked from the inside. That was enough. Sierra inspected every wall, every window, testing the locks with her hands. She nodded once. "Good." Mira touched the small bed and the working stove. Her blue eyes softened, filling with something she hadn't felt in a long time. "It's warm," she whispered. Cale leaned against the wall, exhaustion heavy in his bones. But for the first time, he let himself breathe. Days began to fall into rhythm. Sierra worked outside each morning, salvaging scrap and reinforcing the fence Cale built. She hammered metal spikes into the ground and stood on the ridge, near the dome, staring at the horizon like she was daring the past to follow her. Mira stayed closer to the house. She cooked from ration packs, humming as she mixed herbs she found at the market. She planted seeds in the dusty soil behind the hatch. "They'll grow," she said softly. And soon, small green shoots began to break the earth. Cale repaired the wiring, patched leaks, and tuned the heater until it no longer stuttered. His hands stayed busy, but his eyes often lingered, watching Sierra as she swung her blade with precision, watching Mira as she hummed and smiled quietly. Each night they ate together on the floor beside the heater. No one knocked at the door. No footsteps hunted outside. Only silence. A good silence. On the 27th morning, Cale awoke with both sisters beside him. Sierra's arm rested across his chest. Mira's hand clutched his shirt, Their breathing was steady, soft. He didn't move. Not for a long time. He just listened. Later, he made breakfast. Sira stole half his coffee and smirked when he grumbled. Mira leaned against his shoulder, humming while he rewired the cum hub to play old music. The dusty melody filled the room, and for the first time in years, Cale laughed. That afternoon, they walked the edge of the dome. The filtered wind carried. A clean chill. Sira climbed the ridge and shouted into the sky, her voice echoing until it came back like thunder. Mira bent low, plucking 2 small flowers from the rocks. She pressed one into Cale's palm and tucked the other behind Sira's ear. Neither pulled away. That night, they didn't sit apart. They leaned into each other, tangled together under the same blanket. Not from fear, not from cold, but from choice. "I don't want to run anymore," Mira whispered. "You won't," Cale said firmly. "Not here." Sira's amber eyes softened. "You gave us names, family, you made us real." Cale shook his head. "You were always real. I just made the world see it." For a long time, none of them spoke. But the silence was warm. Later, as the dome lights dimmed, Cale stretched out on the bed. Mira curled against his chest. Sira lay close on the other side, her scarred hand resting lightly over his heart. Outside, Arden Haven was quiet, forgotten by the galaxy. Inside the small house, 3 lives finally fit together. Not survival. Not escape. Home.